Welcome back to the Heave podcast. Back after a long hiatus. Our guest today is Marshall Sheldon, a technician, our first technician that we've had on the podcast. So I'll give a quick kind of lead in as to why we have Marshall on, and then we'll let him introduce himself and kind of give him his background. So as I mentioned, first technician, which is what I'm really looking forward to today because me starting at a dealership back in 2004, there's a lot of discussion back then and then leading through the years of, why is there a labor shortage? Why do we think less people are entering the trades? But what was interesting to me is that it seems like all the discussion was led by people who are salesmen or sales management. And I'd love to hear it from somebody who does the work every day. And so Marshall seems to be the perfect choice. It's got a great social media presence, writes newsletters, feels comfortable, seems to share his opinion. So we're happy to have you on this morning. And like a true technician, we're filming on a Saturday because you're busy working on stuff during the week. So
I appreciate it.
Welcome.
I guess just a brief background about myself. I was in the Marine Corps, and before or after the Marine Corps, when I got out, I thought, so my wife had got pregnant, and I was medically retired from the Marine Corps, and at the time I wasn't working because I had just gotten out. I was taking a break, and I thought my wife got pregnant. I thought, man, I gotta set a good example for this child that's coming into the world. So back then we didn't have phones like we have now, so it was a little harder to find jobs, so you looked in the newspaper and things like that. And I seen a job ad for a wash hand to wash trucks. So I went over there to the place. I just drove over there, and the foreman, I met him. His name was Nate. We did a little interview or whatever, and he's like, he asked me a bunch of questions. Can you weld, or can you do any of these other things? I was like, no, dude, I just need a job, and I want to do whatever you tell me to do. And so we shook hands on it, and then like the next Monday I started and started washing trucks. So I washed trucks and trailers. It was a big fleet shop, and that's what I did. It was like $12 an hour or something, and I worked there for 5 years, and started there as the wash hand, and I left there as the shop foreman. So after that, I kind of outgrew the fleet environment because I was just trying to learn as much as I could. And fleets now have better options, but back then they didn't have as many options for training technicians. So I really wanted to learn more. I wanted to know more. And the next thing that made sense was a dealership. So I got on at a dealership, which was kind of difficult because when you work at a big fleet, they're doing business with all the dealerships around, and those dealers don't typically hire from their customers, so that made it a little difficult for me. But I did find one that didn't have any relationships with them, and I got on there, and I worked there for a couple of years. And what I really enjoyed about that place was that it was a new dealership, so it was brand new. They didn't have any technicians when I started. There was like 3 of us the guys that started the whole thing. And I did same deal. I did whatever I had to do. I did as much training as possible. And, when you're in a smaller town, everybody knows what shops pay the most, what shops train the most. And, because technicians, it's a small market, and we all talk to each other. So, once I got some dealership experience, there was one dealership in particular that I was looking for. So my goals always were to learn as much as I could so that I could get to that particular dealership, which I knew had a good reputation around. So I did everything necessary to get there, and I've been working there since. So,
were you, as a kid, like working on cars and fixing stuff with your dad? Were you interested in that?
No, I think like I was in sports and things like that, but like nothing against my dad because he's kind of a scholarly kind of guy. He's got several master's degrees,
Mhm.
but and I love him because he's my dad, obviously. But he can't change a windshield wiper. Okay, so
Mhm.
I think maybe that kind of drove it a little bit because I was always like, I had a kind of a hot rod car when I was in high school, but I didn't really know how to do anything on it myself. And whenever there was a problem with it, my dad just took it to a mechanic and they fixed it. But at that time, I didn't really have
Mhm.
any uh, want or desire to, do any work like that myself. I've always been kind of a handy person. Like I can
Mhm.
learn things really quickly. And I think my entry into the mechanics world was out of necessity. Um, I needed to support my family. I needed to set a good example for my kids, and I found that this industry gave me all of that.
And did you learn pretty much on the job? Did you ever go to trade school or vocational school at all?
Everything that I learned on the job, and I learned from good mentors and the dealerships and any of the training that I got along the way.
And this was all like on the clock work. So if you, because obviously when you're starting
Right.
out, you make mistakes, right? And so you're making some mistakes as a young trainee and on the clock,
So I
and
think
like
that
how does that work
entering into
in
the
a
field
dealership
and
setting?
in a fleet environment was probably the best route for me. And there's a saying that a lot of mechanics say is, fleet shops are a place where you go to be born and you go to die. So when you're in that middle section, when you're at the peak of your skill set, you're at the peak of your ability, um, that's your best time to make money. So you're not going to make all that money at the fleet shop. So you go to a fleet shop to learn your
Hmm.
skills and get out and make money. And then when you start to slow down towards the end of your career, then you would start looking at another fleet shop to go to. Where I think over the last couple of years that's kind of changed a little bit, but um, I think it still rings true.
Interesting. So basically learning on the job, self-taught. Now, I mean, before this interview, I wanted to ask, because it was unknown, why mentorship was so important to you, but now I can figure out why. So why don't you tell us about, how important mentorship was for you, and kind of that journey, and why you think it's such a critical piece.
Yeah, so I went to that fleet shop, and I mentioned Nate. Big shout out to Nate. He's out there. Um, every time I do a podcast like this, I always send him the links so that he can watch them. Because we had a couple of really good guys there besides Nate that put a lot of time into making me who I am as a technician. Um, and we had an older guy, Ted, also put a lot of time into helping me learn what to do. And he used to tell me all the time, "You're not going to be here forever, so you need to practice." Like you're in the game right now. You're in the dealer right now. So practice when you're doing a repair here, do it like you would want to pay for it. Like somebody's going to pay for this job. So that's how I my mindset was at the fleet shop, and that was all put into me, with him. And we had a really awesome, mid level technician, and same deal. Whenever those mid level technicians are kind of, and you're a junior, they're kind of scary sometimes. So like my approach to them was just like, hey, how can I help you? Because like I would get done washing trucks and there's nothing else to wash that day and I got to
Hmm.
stay busy. So I would go to them and be like, hey, can I jack that up for you? Or what can I, because I don't really know anything at the time. So the way I
Hmm.
approached jumping in was just like, hey, can I wash those parts for you? Or what can I do? And by me
Hmm.
helping them just do the little mundane things that they didn't want to do anyway, during that, I'd wash wheel bearings, I'd wash them out in the parts washer. And then I'd bring them back over to them, and then they would say, "Well, this is how you this is how, after you wash them. This is how you look at them to tell if they're reusable or not." And I just did that over and over and over. And
Mm-hmm.
every time I seen them and I had an opportunity, that's how I was able to learn. As far as like uh, on being paid to train, you get that OJT. I think there's one level of it, but because I wanted it, because I knew, okay, I want to make more money, but the only way you make more money is more and you can do more. So, like I said, back then you didn't really have phones where you can Google anything right now. So I went to our library and I got books and I spent a lot of time after hours, on my own time trying to learn as much as I could so that I could apply that or ask questions about that to Ted or Nate or any of those guys at the shop. And I think that has carried with me my whole career. Once I made it to the dealer, we have access to training 24/7. I can, as soon as we get off this call here, I can jump on training right now and do training for the OEM that I work for right now. And I'm always doing training,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't know too much, and we get paid off of how much we know. So you can't just be doing it when the company gives you time to do it. If you want to be a killer, you have to do it all. You have to be constantly improving yourself. I mow the lawn, I come in, take a shower, and then I'm doing training. When the commercial comes on, I do a couple questions. You're watching the game when the commercial hits. That's when you watch a little more of that training. So all the extra time I have, and it's not with my kids or doing something like that. It's devoted to making myself better.
Now, did these mentors, did they have the same approach? Is that what you learned this, constant drive for improvement from? Was that set as an example or?
Well, I I think it was more that the opportunity was there. I just saw the opportunity, and I think just throughout history, people that seize opportunity are people that are successful.
Interesting. And it seems like where you started, this was part of their culture, of because I've been plenty of places where the experienced guys don't necessarily want to spend time with younger, inexperienced guys. It's more of an annoyance than anything else.
No, 100%. I think when I interviewed with Nate and, he was asking what I do know, I think that was his opportunity to gauge what he was going to have to put into me. And he did it,
Hmm.
when we had at that shop, we had a 15-minute coffee break in the morning, and we had a 1 hour paid lunch. And then we had a 15-minute coffee break in the afternoon. And every time we had a break, the welder got dragged out. And Nate had me welding during lunch after I ate. Um, you know, he would pull out some scrap and he's like, "Hey, weld these two things together." The more I weld, the better I got. Whenever there was an opportunity to teach me something, he would bring me over like, "Hey, check this out." Or when I'm doing something, he was walking by, he could say, "Hey, you could try it this way too." He was always really good about jumping in and giving you opportunity to learn something. And that was definitely part of who he was. And I think that did set that in my mindset, early on, for sure.
Hmm. So, what is the career progression? So, you start out like
Hmm.
basically on the wash rack, right? And then you mentioned kind of you learn underneath experienced techs, and you got to be a shop foreman. Then you go to what is the typical career progression?
Well, I think unfortunately, techs usually start, somewhere in the bottom. Like you might would start as a porter, which is just moving cars around in the lot at an automotive shop. Or a lot of heavy duty guys start in the lube section, where they're just changing oil and greasing chassis. And I think that would go for heavy duty trucks and off road. A lot of guys start in those
Hmm.
areas, and as they progress in their training, they're given more uh, uh, intricate jobs, and they progress to probably their master level eventually. and that's kind of the end of the line usually.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, the guys that are a little more exceptional face to face with customers, those guys have opportunity to kind of move to foreman. So if I had any advice for younger guys out there, I would suggest that they learn some soft skills, how to talk to people and things like that. There's plenty of stuff out there, even free stuff that people can take. You know, Harvard School of Business offers some free training. Literally, you can get on there and get a free certificate from the Harvard School of Business,
Mm-hmm.
and help with some leadership and things like that.
So that's an interesting point. That was something that I saw that was lacking tremendously in the heavy machinery dealership world, and it was something that we just never really dealt with. And where it connected for me was I started seeing technicians as salespeople. I don't know if you would share that opinion, but in terms of technicians are the ones who are in front of a customer, probably more
Yeah,
so than actually salespeople. And there was never really any focus, at least for our dealership, on training on how to talk to customers, right? How to, most of the time, I'm sure you're showing up on site
right.
and then the customer's angry, right? And so, how to diffuse the situation, but then how to manage their expectations, how to talk to them, you know, it requires training just like anything else. And I
Yeah,
think that's been a big gap.
yeah, 100%. I think that's still a problem, right? Um, I think you know, I think you you've got to invest in yourself, because they're not going to do everything for you. I think a lot of these dealerships are doing the most they can. Um, I think that's definitely a missing
Mhm.
ingredient. You know, the OEM I work for now offers a lot of professional training that you can do in house. Um, and like how to write professional emails and things like that. We have all of that integrated in our onboarding process. But you do it that one time, and then you know there's no really additional stuff, right? So I think that you've got to have that willingness to constantly improve and want to really hone your professional skills, and I mean that in a way that's not technical. You know, professional and technical are two different things. I think mechanics, a lot of times people think, or realistically, we cuss a lot, we chew, we smoke, we do all of those things. But if you want to be professional, you have to think about those things. How they affect your appearance. How do you want to show up to a facility? Do you want your truck looking bad and it's covered in crap? I know they get dirty, but we need to wash them, right? The
Mhm.
insides need to be fairly clean and presentable when we show up to a site. Um, since I'm training apprentices, we work on equipment, and when we go from one job site to the next, if we're really dirty, we will change our uniforms to go to the next job because I don't want to show up to the next customer covered in dirt or mud or soaking wet from the previous repair. So we change. Our shirts are tucked in. We're wearing a belt. My apprentices, if you ever have any of them on, they'll tell you one of my biggest things is we call it a gig line, and it's from the Marine Corps. I carried that over with me, but it's that you got your button up shirt, and it's the seam that goes down your button up
Mhm.
shirt, and it's got to line up perfectly with your pants, where your pants zip up and button up. So
Mhm.
we always are calling each other out. Hey, your gig line's all jacked up. So we keep our uniforms nice and we keep them presentable, because we go from customer to customer and we want to look professional. So I think you know um, keeping your hair cut and keeping a good professional look. Just because we're mechanics doesn't mean that we need to
Mhm.
look poorly, or be unkept. I think that's important too. So
So getting back just to close the loop on like the career progression, it seems like the everybody wants to get to the highest level is to be a field technician. Because there's a level of independence. You get your own truck. You maybe make your own schedule as opposed to showing up to the shop every day. And Is that kind of how it goes? Like as you progress with skills, like that's the ultimate destination, field technician.
Well, I think that's kind of changed a little bit. So like, I know for me anyway, in heavy duty trucks at least, that we're separate. We're pretty separate. So like, we will hire our own apprentices and train them in the field with us. They stay in the field the whole time.
Hmm.
So like, I'm not choosing apprentices
Hmm.
from the shop to bring into the field, because I got to spend 50 hours a
Hmm.
week with this person in a service truck. So typically,
Hmm.
with my management team, I have a lot of freedom when it comes to this, but we recruit someone who's going to mesh well with me, has similar ideals to me, and is going to be a good complement
Hmm.
to me. So because I have to be with them in a truck 50 hours a week, and if they don't work out, I have more
Right.
skin in the game too. If I'm like, yeah, that's the guy, can we hire that guy, or girl? I'll train a female apprentice too.
Hmm.
I don't care as long as they got what it takes. So
How many apprentices do you have today?
right now I have two, currently, but so there's kind of a progression to the apprenticeship. So like, I train one on one for like 6 months, and then I start to kind of peel them back, and I take on another one.
Hmm.
But I'm still mentoring the first apprentice. The other one I'm just starting. The other one has got more independence, and I start to give
Hmm.
them more independence, and I'm giving them more skilled jobs and things like that. But I'm still mentoring people that I trained 3 years ago. I'm trying to duplicate myself into them.
Hmm.
So the more guys that I can train, or gals to train, the more my legacy spreads. So as I train an apprentice, that apprentice
Hmm.
grows, and they're 3 to 5 years in, they start to train apprentices themselves, and then everything I train an apprentice, they put into their apprentice. And then and that's my legacy as a mentor, is everything I teach them, they put into
Hmm.
theirs, and it just spreads and spreads and spreads, right?
So, what is the biggest challenge of being a technician today?
Well, there's the typical stuff, in the field, we work in all the environments, and, in the Midwest, when I lived in Wyoming, I was working in -40, and now I'm in the South, and it's just brutally hot. And so you've got the elemental
Hmm.
challenges. I think if I were to put something on it, I would say, because there is lots of work and not enough mechanics, I would say probably burnout would probably be one of the biggest challenges that we
Hmm.
have right now. I work a lot of hours. I put a lot of mental work into my actual work, and then I'm also training apprentices on top of that, and that can be pretty grueling on your mind. Day to day to day to day, and it's back to back
Hmm.
to back. Sometimes what I do is I'll take a 6 month break from taking on a new apprentice, and I'll just continue with the previous apprentice,
Hmm.
and put a little more time into them to give myself a little bit of a reprieve, um, to kind of give myself a break. I think, and just like back to what we were talking about, we don't, with the professional stuff, we don't put a lot of emphasis on mental health and how to deal with struggles, how to deal with burnout, how to know you're
Hmm.
in burnout, you know, uh, things like that. We don't put a lot of emphasis on that in our field. Heavy duty trucks, heavy duty mechanics, automotive. None of them are really helping us cope with
Hmm.
all of those things that come with burnout. Um,
Yeah, I mean, there's no shortage of demand for your services, right? And you're right, there is a shortage of labor. As someone who's not a technician, one thing that seems to me to be a huge challenge, especially in heavy machinery, I'm sure it's the same in heavy duty trucks, is that it's not, repairs are not black and white. Like troubleshooting seems to be such a huge part that is not defined, and it seems like the best technicians, are the best at troubleshooting. Is that take us through like the art of troubleshooting and how important it is to the overall process.
So, I think one of the biggest keys to troubleshooting is experience. I mean, there's no replacement for it. You know, um, you might work on the same piece of machinery, different, the same model of machinery 100 times, and each time you work on it,
Mm-hmm.
you diagnose something and you find out what fixed it, and then you carry that on to the next one and the next one and the next one, and you start to see patterns. Your mind remembers those patterns, and then because you've seen those patterns
Mm-hmm.
before, you still have to do your checks. You can't just say, "Oh, it needs this thing," otherwise that's going to bite you. It's done it. It's everybody who's diagnosed has fallen into that
Mm-hmm.
trap, but you really have to you create patterns in your mind, and then you do your checks, and it creates faster your ability to diagnose things. But I think walking through a troubleshoot. So the way I do things is, first, majority of the equipment nowadays is heavily computerized. So first thing I do is, I check all my basics. I do a walk around, check all my fluids and things like that. I hook up to it. I see what codes we have. Then I do a visual inspection on said component that's thrown a fault. Uh, I think like probably 60 to 70% of the time, I've found a problem by then. Um, just
Mm-hmm.
sticking with those steps. So, keeping it simple is also pretty important. You can't just go straight. I find apprentices go straight to, oh, it's worst case scenario every single time. And I'm like, oh, dude, it was just this wire. It doesn't need an engine.
So yeah, so is that where people use the term parts changer? Is that kind of what you're highlighting?
Well, so a parts changer for me is someone who doesn't diagnose typically. So like, and there's a place for those in every shop. Some guys are just incredible at
Mm-hmm.
changing parts. Like, I the second shop that I worked at, we had this guy that could do an engine harness. It warranty pay on it was like 10 hours, and this dude could do them in 4 hours all day, every day, over and over and over. And I'd done just as many as he did, and mine took a full eight every time. And I'm always like, dude,
Yeah.
how you can't do it that fast? It's not possible. But
Mm-hmm.
he didn't diagnose anything. I would diagnose a truck, or the uptime bay would diagnose, and all he would
Okay,
do is put the
gotcha.
parts on. And he just got good at knowing all the little things he could do to get a part put on. So to me, a parts guy, a part swapper, is someone who just does that. But we have the saying swap gnostics, where someone is diagnosing would just throw parts at it until it fixes it. Um,
Right, right. And
yes.
that's the negative connotation.
No, you do
That's what
not
you
want
do
to be
not
a
want to be
swap
called.
gnostic guy. No.
Being, I guess, what, 18, 20 years in, like, are there circumstances where it's a brand new issue to you? Like, oh shit, I've never seen that before. Or have you pretty much seen it all at this point?
I mean, so I think in automotive and trucks, we have what we call a bumper to bumper technician, right? So a bumper to bumper technician can fix anything on the truck or car, bumper to bumper. Doesn't matter which system. It could be ABS, it could be drivetrain, it could be engine, could be cab related. And I'm a bumper to bumper technician. So um, what that allows me is I've seen so much over my career that there's not much that I struggle with, or that I can't figure out, because of my wide range of experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what was the question again? Sorry, I just kind of went on a diatribe there.
Just no, just like with your experience level, is there anything that kind of stumps you at this point? Anything that, you know what, I've never seen that before.
I mean, I see plenty of stuff that I haven't seen, but there's not a lot of stuff that I don't come to a conclusion on what was wrong. I do see stuff that's wrong. I think uh, there's the vehicles have become so computerized. It makes diagnostics a lot more complicated. and a lot more time involved. So when you've got a truck, a semi truck, give a guess on how many computers do you think are in a heavy duty truck?
10,
Yeah, there's like
10.
15,
I don't know.
and so you've got even the
Okay.
turbo is a smart device now. You were
I
close. You
wasn't
were
that
close.
far off.
You were close. So even the computer, the turbo is a smart device. Um, we've got so many smart devices on these trucks, and the heavy duty and heavy duty equipment is the same way now. So they're using variable geometry turbos that are smart devices. All the knock sensors are smart devices. Um, the injectors are becoming smart devices. So we're getting away from a lot of the
Right.
mechanical stuff, which I feel like reduces some reliability, but it is what it is.
Well, so that's an interesting thing I wanted to discuss is that the customers seem to dislike how computerized everything is. What about the technician side? Do technicians who are relied on to fix these machines and trucks, do they, as a community generally, do they like the more computerized, or do they also wish we could go back in time where things were more mechanical?
I think the older technicians for sure, they for sure wish we could go back, right? But as far as like the newer technicians, I mean, even the guys that are coming after me, these guys they're born with these, these phones, they're technology driven. So it's not a leap for them to get a computer and hook up to it and diagnose a truck with four tests using the computer. Um, you know, the days of us taking heat measurements from exhaust manifolds and determining that there's an injector failure mechanically by doing that are almost long gone. These technicians, they can tell you there's an injector, which injectors is failing, and what RPM it's failing, all using the computer. So I think it's definitely less involved. I think the reason we've gone so computerized is to help us reduce uptime so that we can diagnose the trucks faster or diagnose the equipment faster. We can get to a piece of equipment, we can hook up to it, we can give our customer an idea of what's happening within an hour. That gives them an opportunity to make plans. If it's heavy equipment, they can get another piece of equipment in. Hey, this is going to be X amount of time before we can get this
Yep.
part, or whatever the case is. It's going to be a big job, or what, we know how labor intensive this failure is. Or with the truck side, you know, um, they can get another truck to come get the load, whatever. So it gives a customer options as far as continuing on with whatever mission that equipment does. So I feel like it does help because prior it would take the diagnostics was a lot more physically involved.
Are there certain brands that are tougher to work on than others, or are they kind of similar across the board?
I think for like mid-level to younger technicians, yes. Um, but there is ones that are more compact that are even more difficult for me. Just like we were talking before the show, skid loaders are like bobcats and stuff like that. They're so compact, and they're difficult to work on
Right.
sometimes because they're so small. And if they don't,
And there's not enough room, and you're having to, like, components are hidden and all
right,
that kind of stuff.
and since they are equipment, everything's heavy, and you're in a smaller area, and it just all sucks, and what they do for a living, they work in dirt and things like that, or asphalt or concrete, and they've got it all packed in everywhere. And yeah, it you know the more compact, I would say, the harder the vehicle is to work on, I think.
What would you say makes a great technician?
um so I got some, let me grab my notes here because I jotted some notes down for this one. So
Sure.
I read that question and I thought, what do I do to choose my apprentices? What am I thinking? What is going through my mind when I want to pick someone that I feel like is going to go the distance, is going to be successful in a career at what we do? And the first thing, when you're talking to someone, you can kind of identify that they have an above average intelligence. So intelligence is something that I'm looking for, because what we do is you got to be a smart person to do it. And it's not to say that everybody can't do it, but everybody can't do
Hmm.
it, I guess. But punctuality is also a big thing. So if you're hiring somebody from a school, I don't really look at their GPA. I look at, did they show up? Because if somebody shows up, I can train them. So punctuality is pretty key for me. Um, I try to ask them questions that would indicate that they have a personal drive. So, did they do any extracurriculars in school? That, volunteering or
Hmm.
things that they invested their time into outside of their school, that would indicate to me that they would likely do training and things like that to improve themselves going forward. And I'm not saying that they have to do
Hmm.
their technical training at home or whatever, but somebody who's willing to invest in themselves outside, to make themselves better. So personal drive was a big thing, and that's pretty much what I got down there for you. So just to recap, I got intelligence, punctuality, personal drive.
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought techs are engineers. You know, plain and simple. It's problem solving is such a huge part of it. Curiosity, which ties into intelligence, right? A desire to figure it out, desire to look for to improve, get outside knowledge. Absolutely. The big topic, the technician shortage. I'd love to get your opinion on. You've been in it for a long time. What do you see?
Yeah, um, I think automotive has a long way to go. There, we talked to it previously, kind of touched on it before the show. I think flat rate's going to be a struggle for them. I think the more they get away from flat rate, the better they're going to be as far as retaining and recruiting technicians. I think there's a place for it, like we discussed before the show. There's, some of those
Hmm.
shops have the workload, and there's successful technicians out there. So I'm not going to bang it completely. That are just making tons of money. The shop's making tons of money, and it has its place. But I think the shops that are making that optional, they have an hourly uh, situation that you can choose, or they also have a flat rate option you can choose. I think those are the shops that are going to have less difficulty keeping, retaining, um, or recruiting technicians in automotive. The work is hard. There's nothing we can do about that. The work is just hard. It's hard work. I think that plays a key role in the labor shortage. Um, we've got all those environmental factors that we talked about. I think, you know, obviously I'm passionate about the mentorship. I think growing your own is uh, a good option if you're, and here's why mentorship is a good reason, because is a good option, because 3 to 5 year technicians are difficult to find, right? They're out there, but they're being paid well, and the shops are working really diligently to retain them. So turnkey technicians are difficult to find for recruiters. um, Technicians in my skill level are even harder to find, because same deal, the shops are paying them incredibly well. um, they're giving them a lot of things that they want to keep them retained. And I find that they're not, you don't find them on the market. We're stealing them from other shops. We're not finding them looking for a job. You know, and then apprentices, the we're doing a fantastic job of getting apprentices. You know, I can go out and get 5 apprentices for you right now, and have you 5 apprentices. We could do. 10 interviews, and you could hire 5 apprentices within a week. So apprentices are not hard to find. We're doing a good job of getting people and hiring them in. We're not doing a good job of following up after we hire them. We lose 50% of our apprentices within the first year of hire. So if you hire 5, you're going to keep 2, and those 2 are probably not going to make it to 3 years. So that's where that mentorship comes in, because that percentage of keeping them goes up to like 80%. So mentorship is a big deal. And mentorship also is better for the mentor, because our retention rates are higher for the mentors. Our satisfaction rates are higher for the mentors, because I feel like they're making a difference. So I feel like mentorship, it's not the silver bullet by any means, but it can increase our options. It can increase our retention, and I think that's a big deal. Is mentorship is going to help out a lot, I think. And years ago I saw it, and that's why I started digging in on it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, because what you're doing is you're trying to make sure that those people who enter the trade are successful, right? So
Right.
that they don't get frustrated and leave. Have you seen much change in your career? Or because to me, like I started in '04, I haven't really seen any movement. It's kind of just always hanging out there, and there hasn't really been many actionable items to try to change that. It's just always just talked about generally, like, oh, there's a labor shortage.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the only thing that I've seen as I started to see more of these apprenticeships popping up, OEM I work for is doing a pretty good job with apprenticeships, but it's just they just started coming into it, and really starting to leaning into it. I think a lot of the big dealership groups are doing the same. They're seeing this as a thing. They're leaning into it, but and like I said, we're doing a great job at pulling in apprentices. But following up with the mentors is where we're starting to see issues. Um, because the things that I deal with, like I said, um, the mental fatigue, the all of the things that come with, putting so much of yourself into someone else really drains you out. And so there's
Sure.
not a lot of assistance for us as mentors. You know, I, there's a lot of solutions, I feel like, to it. I feel like dealerships that have mentorships, they could do round tables, and they could have all of their mentors in group meetings on Zoom or whatever, and they could talk about things that they're struggling with, or have an outlet for to discuss. I feel like that would be a big help. Um, but definitely, I'm with you. I don't see a lot of movement either. I just know that what I've seen is that we're doing a better job at getting these guys in. Um, a lot of the shops are putting more time into schools, being involved with the schools, getting in with the schools. I think that helps. Once again, it's like there's no silver bullet, but there's a lot of small things that we can do that add up.
Are there improvements to be made with the trade schools, the vocational schools?
I mean, 100%. But that's what the advisory boards are for. I'm a member of 2 advisory boards with local community colleges, because you can't. The schools don't know what you need. Like, they don't know what that technician is going to come out of that school doing. So you got to get involved in a community college. I do community colleges because they're local to me. A lot of the kids from the high schools, that's what they can afford. They're affordable typically. And so I lean into those because I feel like it's more helping my direct community. So I go to those schools, and not to say that the big schools are bad, but I'm just saying those are the ones I choose to focus my time on. And
Sure.
to be honest, a lot of the big schools, they already got tons of support. These smaller schools, they don't. So, but you
Sure.
go there, and you talk to the students, and you learn the curriculum, and then you start to figure out, okay, well, these kids, you hire one of those kids from that school, and you realize that there's a lot of things that they need to know before they get to you. They don't know how to do brakes, or something very simple that, would be an apprentice level job. And so you want to make sure that they can do that when they get to you. You don't have to train them everything, right? So, because, it's unrealistic to think you're going to hire an apprentice, you're going to make a ton of money off this apprentice. But it's not unrealistic to think that you should be able to put them on some basic skill level jobs and make some money while you're because you're already going to be putting a ton of time and a ton of money into the apprentice. So you want to make something off them at the same time. So it's not unrealistic to think that.
So it seems like trade schools suffer a little bit from the same thing that regular colleges and universities do. The narrative around you go to a regular college and you're not really that prepared for the real life of the real world.
Oh yeah, 100%. And something that I do like with my apprentices, I focus on the technical stuff that 1 year while I'm working on them, but they're also doing all of their OEM training, and they're doing all this training. They're drinking from a fire hose. But as they slow down a little bit, I start to, I've got 3 to 5 year technicians that I trained, that I still mentor, but now I mentor them differently. So they're working technically just fine, but I mentor leadership into those technicians, and I'm mentoring financials, because I don't want to just train technicians. I want to train service managers and foremans, and I want guys to go out there and gals to go out there and be successful at whatever they want to do. So if in 5 years they don't want to be mechanics and they want to be a service manager, I want them to have the skill set to go do that, or have that opportunity to go to an interview. So I teach interview skills. I teach how to read financials. You know, because I'll get a P&L, and I'll train my apprentices on the P&L, how to read it, what I'm looking for when I'm looking at a P&L. So like I said, I want them to have every opportunity to be successful people. And I think, like you said, that all goes back to the guys that started me up. They poured everything they had into me. And so every time I learn something, I pour that into my apprentices. And yeah, I think that's what being a mentor is. There's no holding back. You gotta teach them everything you know.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think I agree with you in that there's no one solution to it. It is a complex problem. There's probably 10 things that need to improve. One of the things that I've always been focused on that people maybe don't love to hear is that the economics. Like, I was surprised at the lack of wage growth for such a hard, demanding job. Technicians are highly skilled.
Yeah.
And that to me plays a part in maybe why there's been a shortage. Like I tell people all the time, like, our company, we're a technology company, we employ software engineers, and you've seen this huge spike in people pursuing that career path, and there's plenty of demand for it, and they're highly compensated for the skill. And I equate technicians with software engineers. You're mechanical engineers, and I think if the wage growth was similar, I think that could help more people getting into the trade.
100%. Like I said, it's like a big compounding problem where, we focused heavily on getting people in. And like I said, I feel like we've made strides there. We're getting plenty of people in there. The wages have come up in heavy duty truck. But when you get to a skill level where I'm at, I can apply my skill level to heavy duty trucks or automotive, or I could go to any industry that I wanted that's closely related, equipment. And I've been in talks with some heavy duty equipment facilities in the past. And what I found is they don't pay nearly what I get paid. And they're like, well, so what do you got to have?
Correct.
And so I tell them, and they're just blown away. I'm like, dude, in 1 year, my apprentices make what you just offered me. So, you know, and they said, well, you can work as, yeah. And they said, well, you
It
can
is
work as
mind
many hours
blowing.
as you want. I said, well, that doesn't add up to my hourly rate. I can work as many hours as I want right now.
No.
I just get paid way more than what you guys want to pay.
Do you watch South? Have you ever watched South Park at all?
I have,
Have
yeah.
you seen the episode? I don't know if it was in the last like 3 seasons or what, where Randy has to hire somebody to like fix his oven door, and
That
all
one
the
was
repairmen
hilarious.
are
Yeah.
making, yeah, they're making like
Yeah.
an astronomical amount of money because no one in South Park knows how to do any work, any manual labor.
Yeah. That one was funny. That was a good one. But yeah, I don't, we had training. I jotted training down here, but we hit our hour. But if you want to hit training, we definitely can.
No, no, talk about training.
So, well, bring us back into training because you mentioned training before the show, and I can't really put my finger on exactly what that conversation entailed.
Yeah, so one of the things that I've noticed on the heavy machinery side, I think one of the things we've established today is that there is a difference between heavy duty truck and heavy
Right.
machinery. You grew up in an environment where there was mentoring, there was a viewpoint of like long term thinking. And there is not that long term thinking in heavy machinery. I've been on that side for 20 years. There is it starts with, hey, heavy equipment breaks all the time. Everyone's short on mechanics, so it's all short term thinking. If we could hire 50 more guys today. Well, great. If you hire 50 more guys, there's no long term plan of like, let's get these guys up to speed. Let's get them to where they can be great technicians. It's, hey, if we have 50 guys, there's 50 machines that need to be repaired right now. And you do a real disservice to the individual, and you do a disservice to your dealership because you're putting them out on jobs that they're not prepared for, and customers pick up on that
Yes.
really quickly. And so training is not nearly as focused on in heavy machinery, and everyone suffers. The customer suffers, the individuals suffer, and the technicians themselves suffer. So that's what I've seen. It still exists today. And everyone knows that it needs to improve, but nobody's really approaching it of like, look, we're going to have to make some sacrifices as a company because this, you know, 15-20% of our labor force, we're going to need them to not be billing every hour, but training so that they can advance and be more skilled when we do put them out in the field.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that comes down to a lot of that is their onboarding process, right? So they've got to have some type of mentorship situation in place, and they've really got to feed those junior technicians when they're coming in, and not just the junior technicians. Say you find a 3 to 5 year guy, right? But you want them to fit your environment and your culture, and you've got to bring them into that fold, and that all happens with the onboarding. So if the onboarding isn't there, it just falls apart from the beginning, you know. So I think onboarding is going to be pretty important going forward, and um, but training definitely is a big ticket item. They've got to celebrate it. Um, When's the last time you saw a heavy duty shop on any social media celebrate a technician for getting a certification? I ain't seen one.
No, I just see you celebrating, and you have a staggering amount of certifications. But you're
Yep.
right. You know, it's that's one of the. What do you why do you think the industry is so slow to change or to try new things?
You know, well, you and I have talked about this in the past, but there's only so many of the heavy duty machinery facilities, right? And those facilities, they own a large portion of an area, right? And so there's a lot fewer of them, and the competition is a lot smaller. And so I feel like that plays a big role in them progressing because there's not as much competition for them. Where in heavy duty trucks, we have lots of competition. So, and in a heavy duty truck, they could, I might be working on a Peterbilt, and that Peterbilt can go to a Volvo dealer and get repaired there as well. Whereas somebody who owns a cat piece of equipment, they might not think, well, I could call the John Deere guys and they could come hook up to it and fix it, right? They're not going to do it,
Yeah,
right?
you're not going to do
So
it.
the
Yep.
competition
Nope. No
is
way.
very low. And so they don't think that they're in a competition. They don't feel that they are in competition for their technicians, with their customer base. So the competition level overall for them in their minds is very little. So I think it's so slow because they don't feel that they're in competition. But you and I, if we went and started a
Mm-hmm.
truck shop tomorrow, we could hire technicians from heavy duty
Mm-hmm.
facilities, and I'm talking heavy duty machinery, to work on trucks, and we could pay them more competitive wages, give them options, and we could steal techs away so easy. And the automotive dealerships are struggling with the same thing. HD trucks, you could, if you were an HD truck service manager, you could take your personal car or one of your service trucks in one day and just hand out business cards, and you could probably hire 3 technicians right out of the Ford dealership. They're not making it difficult for us to compete. It's not a competition for us because we just
Mm-hmm.
steal the technicians. It's not a big deal.
What I know we're gonna be wrapping up soon. What is your future goal? Like what are you working towards professionally? It's you clearly seem to be very driven, have things kind of charted out. Like what is your future look like?
Well, I did the service manager. I did service manager for a year. I thought, I originally I wanted to be like a regional vice president originally. So like 8 years ago, I set a goal and I was like, I want to be a regional vice president somewhere. I want to be in charge of a whole region, 10 stores, 8 stores, whatever. That was my original goal. Not to say that I couldn't get there, but um, along the way, I found the mentorship stuff, and I started leaning into that. And when I do something, I go all the way. If I'm going to do something, I don't halfway do it. I go 100 in it. So I just started leaning into training myself so that I could be better for my apprentices. And so I stayed with that for a little while. I got to service manager. I did that for a year. I thought I would have more influence on the technicians. Um, I would have more ability to affect their lives. I could I could do better for the technicians. And along that way, I realized that that's really not the role of the service manager. So when I got a service manager, I did it, and I feel like I did a good job. But I realized that that's wasn't the place for me. So I went back to the shop. I stepped down from that role, and I went back to the shop, and I doubled down on the mentorship. And and I've been kind of in a limbo mode right there in the mentorship, just staying drilled into that and staying focused on that, because ultimately that's what kept me in the industry. I think about 10-year mark, I felt like I was going to leave, I was going to quit, I was going to go do something different altogether. And then, like I said, I found that mentorship, and that kept me in the field. It gave me satisfaction because I could fix any truck somebody put in front of me. That wasn't a challenge to me anymore. Then the challenge became to find somebody that was like me when I started, that wanted to improve themselves, have the ability to support their families, um, and wanted to be something. And so that's what I changed up, and I wanted to pour everything I have into someone else so that they could do the same thing that I've made a great living for myself, and been able to support my family, and have a family that I feel like is proud of what I've done. And I really wanted to drill that into someone else, and I've done it like 30 times now. I have guys that are service managers and assistant service managers and foremen, and guys that work at OEMs as trainers now, and I got lots of successful people that I trained. And so now I'm kind of at that point where I'm like, I got to find something else to redirect all my silliness with, and uh, that's definitely something I'm working on. The end goal, um, I've joked around with my wife that when I'm ready to slow down, probably in the next 10 years, I'm I think the ultimate, when you're a technician, I think the ultimate position, right? The highest level of technician is working for an OEM, as a technical advisor. So like, as technicians at the dealership, when we run into a problem that we cannot figure out, we call the OEM. The OEM helps us figure it out, right? And that guy that we call that helps us figure it out, that's the ultimate spot, right? That guy has already been in the field for X amount of years, and now he's the ballerest dude around. So I always felt like that would be a position for me when I'm ready to kind of slow down at an OEM or an OEM trainer. I thought about schools, but the schools have a long way to go with pay. I don't think I'm ready to take that just drastic
Hmm.
pay cut. Even 10 years from now, I'm not sure
Sure.
that I would be willing to do that to myself. But I think the OEMs, the training positions at the OEMs are still paying. They're paying really good right now. So as long as that continues, that's probably going to be my 10-year spot. If I can't find something in my mentorship realm that I'm in, I joke around with my wife and I tell her director of technician development sounds pretty good, but we'll see.
Well, I appreciate your time this morning, now afternoon. It was great to hear kind of your story and your perspective on some of these issues that we seem to be talking about every day, every month, every
Yeah.
year in the industry. So thanks for joining us.